Alert, the host has started broadcast.
Go back to mute.
That's a good intro.
Let me check and see if we're live on Facebook before we jump into this.
And Kim, once Brandon starts speaking, you can mute me as well.
Okay, I will do that. Is there anybody on Facebook who can let me know if we're on? Okay, well, it indicates on my screen that we are live on Facebook. Yeah, we should be okay.
Okay.
Yep, we're on Facebook. We're good to go.
Okay. And you have the other people on Zoom as well.
Yes, I do. We have some here on Zoom with us and some on Facebook.
Excellent. Excellent. Ready to go? Hit the record button.
Let me unmute. Oh my gosh. I apologize that I am just not on my game here. So give me a second.
All set. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you, Brandon.
Okay, great. I think we're good to go.
Okay, hit the record button.
Got it.
Okay. All right, so hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. Third Eye Insights Zoom/Facebook workshop. Tonight, we have a real important workshop. It's about sleep, whether you get enough sleep or not, what your problem is, why you can't sleep. We have a sleep therapist, Brandon Duffy from St. Charles Hospital, and Brandon's going to explain some of the conditions that cause this phenomenon. So before we get started, I just want everybody to know we're going to hopefully save our questions to the end. If you have a question and you're on a computer, you can hit Alt-Y, will raise your hand, and Kim, the moderator, will then unmute you so you can ask your question. And if you have to unmute yourself, it's Alt-A on the computer. And then on the phone, it's *6 to mute and unmute yourself, and *9 if you want to raise your hand to ask a question. So Brandon, without any further ado, I know you're not going to put us to sleep, but you're going to give us some tips on how to get a better night's sleep. So go for it.
Thank you. Well, if I do put you to sleep, I won't be able to see you because I have my presentation here. So you'll have to, on our system, you'll have to tell us you fell asleep. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to join you guys. My name is Brendan Duffy. I've been working in the field of sleep for, I think, 23 years now. Started at Stony Brook, and I've been with St. Charles for probably 15 years, and now I'm actually system director of their sleep centers, which are St. Charles, St. Catharines, over in West Islip and Good Samaritan, and then in Nassau County in St. Joseph Mercy. So it's a big, as Devin said, it's a big item. It's an important item for our health, but it's something that we overlook many times. If you guys have any questions, we'll try to answer them later on. If not, I'll leave my email address and phone number on the screen, and hopefully you guys can grab that number 631-476-5677. Feel free to call, feel free to email, go through Devin. He'll get in touch with me, and I'm happy to answer whatever I can. Not a doctor, I am a sleep educator. So I will let you know when I'm not going to give an answer, because each person's case is different and it really requires a little bit of diagnostic time with our physicians. It is a delight to be here. Like I said, with you guys, I went on the website and I was just floored by what's going on. So thanks to Devin and the team at Third Eye Insight for the invite. What a fantastic facility you have here on Long Island in our backyard. I reviewed the website. I was amazed at all the programs and special events, and all of you guys should be proud of what you built over there in Islip. Reading all of these testimonials on the site was kind of heartwarming, because we hear so much bad news and bad stories out there. So it was kind of nice to read one story after one story of people that are having positive results. Speaking of anxiety, during these times, as if sleep isn't tough enough, we've been going through the ringer with things that are going on. And on the screen, I'm showing a picture of a young lady that looks like she's had better days as far as a little bit down, and all kinds of clocks and times behind her. And that's what's going through for us right now. Time is just spinning, and seasons are hard to tell. Sports are being played when they're supposed to be off. Other guys are not playing, they should be on. People are home. People are not going to school. So just things are different. So it's gotten really rough to salvage our sleep. Sometimes we feel like this is a bird, this kind of a strange looking bird outside my window. And he looks like he's had a rough night. His feathers are all in disarray, and his face just says he needs a good cup of coffee. I don't know what kind of bird he is, but he struck my attention because, like I said, he kind of reminds me of us sometimes, where we try to skip on sleep and we look like some kind of a bird that could use about a week's sleep. And if anybody ever does figure out what kind of bird that is, please let me know. So nobody gets off easy when I do these. So we're going to have a little bit of a pop quiz, and it's a free screening for sleep apnea, so your insurance companies will be happy. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and you could just, if it's yes, then add a point. If it's no, then you don't add a point. So the first question is, do you snore? If that's yes, then count that as 1. Are you excessively sleepy during the day? So even after sleeping, do you get up and you still feel like you're tired? Has anyone told you stop breathing while you're sleeping? A lot of times you may be asleep and you're snoring, and all of a sudden nobody hears anything, and they start to worry about you, and it impacts their sleep. Do you have a history of hypertension, high blood pressure? And lastly, you may have to run to the garage and get the measuring tape out. But if you're a male and your neck size is 17 inches or more, or 16 inches or more for female, then count that as a yes. So the highest score you could have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And basically, if you've answered 3 or more of these, it's a pretty good indication that you have sleep apnea. So that sleep apnea is something that's very important to get taken care of, because you stop breathing at night, your heart rate goes up. It leads to other health issues such as diabetes, hypertension. Even some of the research is looking at Alzheimer's connection, because you're not clearing your brain of the toxins at night. We think of sleep as downtime, but it's not really downtime. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we need to give ourselves a chance to get that work done. It's like putting your car in the garage overnight, excuse me, and taking it out in the morning, and the mechanics have worked on it. But sometimes we like to stick that car just halfway in the garage, and we don't get the full workout or the tires changed on the back, and we pay for it somewhere down the line. So again, this picture is of a big globe outside in the courtyard, and really COVID has changed our world, and we've had countries on lockdown. The economy is, going back and forth. There's a lot of people living in fear. We're isolated from family and friends, can't go out to too many places. We're separated, and people are isolated, and we're uncertain. So none of those things are what we would say would be great things to have to get a good night's sleep. So as I said, even in the best of times, we had trouble, but you've added this to the mix, and it's really made it impossible for some. And I like to say sleep is flying under the radar. There's a picture of a radar in the night sky, And even in the best of times, according to Harvard research, 30 to 35% of us have difficulty sleeping and experiencing insomnia. Unfortunately, for too many of us, it does fall under the radar. So let's talk about how much sleep we should be getting at different stages of our life and why it's important for our health. So on this slide, it's kind of showing how many hours do we need. So how many hours of sleep do we need? Everybody is an individual, so I don't want people to worry that, well, I read a book and it says I need to have 9 hours sleep and I only have 7, so now I'm starting to panic. What happens is you actually create even worse sleep. So everybody's individual, everybody has their different sleep needs. Your sleep needs are whatever sleep it is that makes you feel that you can get through your day without having to rely on stimulants like caffeine or anything else that you may want to take, chocolate, different things that might sugar you up, and to get through a day and to feel good about it, to have good reaction time, be able to do it. So newborns is 14 to 17 hours of sleep, infants 12 to 16, toddlers 11 to 14 hours, preschoolers 10 to 13, school age 6 to 12, should be 9 to 12, and then teenagers are 8 to 10. Does anybody know any teenagers that get 8 to 10? Unfortunately, through no fault of their own, a lot of them, they have school start times that don't allow them. And I think we're paying the price when we look at our teens, because they're having a lot of issues emotionally and mentally. And what we're doing is we're cutting some of that very important sleep at the end, which is REM sleep. And a lot of that sleep happens in the last 2 or 3 hours for them, or for anybody basically. But that REM sleep is where we really work on our emotions and memories and things like that. And by cutting that out, we're not really letting them stabilize memories and emotions. And I think we're seeing what's happening because of it. There's a lot of people that are taking risks that they really shouldn't. Their mind, their brains in that area of the brain is not lit up when they're actually out and about. And different things are happening emotionally because they're not getting a full gamut of sleep that they really need to complete not only the physical, but the mental rehabilitation each night. And adults, we say at least 7. Like I said, everybody's a little bit different, but I think at least 7 is a good thing to shoot for. Now, if you say, well, I go to bed at 11 and I get up at 6, so I'm getting my 7, you really have to maybe spend a little bit more time to ensure that you're getting the 7 hours of sleep. And so in general, between 7 and 9 hours. And like I said, we know teens have difficulty with the school start times. And I'm actually part of Start School Later, which is a national organization that tries to talk to the schools and make them realize how important this part of a student's health is. So why do we need sleep? Our bodies need it to, it's not downtime. There are active processes going on. We require long periods of sleep in order to restore and to rejuvenate. Every hour we're awake creates stress on our body, and we also pick up information that must be stored during our sleep. So sleep helps us grow muscle, repair tissue, synthesize hormones, and it's critical for everyone, not just kids, not just teenagers, adults. We all need to retain information, and we all need to continue to learn skills to thrive in life. And the things that we pick up during the day and we learn are the things that are reinforced in a good night's sleep. So a couple of reasons, because I could give you a host of reasons why sleep is important, but in these COVID times, I wanted to kind of hit on some that are very important because of the lifestyles we may be running into right now. So on the screen, we'll talk a little bit about how sleep impacts immunity, weight control, emotional health, and cardiac health. So our immune system, sleep and cytokines. Without sufficient sleep, your body makes fewer of these. It's a type of protein that targets infection and inflammation, effectively creating your immune response. So cytokines are both produced and released during sleep, causing a double whammy if you skimp on shut-eye. We're in the middle of a pandemic with a virus. We need a very, very strong immune system. And we can't go into a battle, God forbid, if we happen to get COVID, with an immune system that we've already kind of defeated on our own by not giving it an opportunity to produce and release these immune system fighting cells. So chronic sleep will make even a flu vaccine less effective by reducing your ability to respond. And there is no COVID vaccine yet, but even when available, it may not work as well if we don't sleep enough before and after you get a vaccine shot. In one study in 2012, people who slept fewer than 6 hours on average per night were far less likely to mount antibody responses to the vaccine they administered to them, and 11 times more likely to be unprotected by the vaccine than people who slept more than 7 hours. So 11 times more protection. In these times, I think we want to be protected as much as we can and have a chance. So here's on this slide is showing different levels of sleep and what your chances of catching a cold when exposed to a virus. So they purposely inoculated groups with the virus, virus bodies, and they had them sleep at different amounts. So the people that slept more than 7 hours, it was 17% actually, they caught a cold. But if you look all the way across, 6 to 7 hours was 22%, 5 to 6 hours, 30, and then less than 5, just about half of those people. So that just goes to show how important sleep is for defending ourselves against these different type of invaders that come. And that's one of the things that's going on while we sleep. And it's definitely in jeopardy if we don't get enough sleep. And that's where it's kind of backward from what's going on for us. Weight control, the COVID-19 pounds. I think I was more like the French fry. And because we're home and we're not exercising enough and some of the gyms were closed, we're starting to pack a little weight. So in many cases, we actually started off like the French fry, but with lack of exercise, we shaped us into the couch potato, and we have to get back to our French fry shape. So how does sleep get involved in that? 5 ways. It helps with weight control. Number 1, it reduces the cravings over unhealthy food, for unhealthy food. And the slide is showing a salad versus a pizza. And we did, or not we, but sleep researchers did test, and they tested 23 non-obese people and sleep deprived them just for one night. The night they were sleep deprived, they craved more junk food just that one night, as the area of the brain that makes rational decisions like eating healthy food, it was inhibited. And overall, the sleep deprived group picked foods just for one night that contained an average of 600 calories more. So not only are you making worse choices when you're sleepy, but you're probably staying up snacking. And if you're going to bed, when you wake up, you're making just bad choices and getting more calories. Another study in Colorado, they showed that losing a few hours sleep a night for a few nights in a row can result in weight gain, just a few nights. And I know there was one other study that I had mentioned a lot when I do library talks. They sleep deprived people for 1 week, and these were healthy adults, young adults, and they ended up being pre-diabetic. Just with 1 week, they had the same levels as somebody who was pre-diabetic, and they weren't pre-diabetic before that. So number 2, it can help you feel fuller longer. So it helps fight the urge for those chips or the goldfish snacks and all that good stuff. They did a study on 1,024 people that showed without proper sleep, their hormones became unbalanced. And leptin, which is the hormone that makes you feel full, gets totally reduced, and ghrelin, which tells you you're hungry, gets increased. So you're getting hit from both sides, where the hormone that you need to tell you we're not hungry anymore is going down, and the one that's telling you are hungry is going up. So it's important for that to keep your hormones in check so that they're operating correctly. Number 3, sleep makes you more likely to stick to your diet. And I have a picture of 2 folks. One's grabbing for a carrot, one's grabbing for an ice cream cone. Again, 472 obese adults. They did tests with Charles Elder in 2012. They measured sleep, stress, depression. Those sleeping 6 to 8 hours did better in the weight loss program than those less than 6 hours. So I think one of the questions I think I saw earlier was, what about exercise? And sometimes you have to find out what body type you are. And I know there's some people that they brag about getting up and going to the gym at 5 in the morning. But if that's not their body type, they may actually be doing more damage, because if they're trying to lose weight, and this is part of how they're doing it, they may actually be doing nothing but destroying their chances of losing weight and possibly adding to injury because they're not giving their bodies a chance to recover. Stress is a factor too. Those sleeping more than 6 hours did twice as well as those with more stress and less sleep. And the quality of sleep matters, as those and other studies showed that fragmented sleep impacts success with weight loss. So disorders such as apnea, chronic insomnia should be diagnosed and treated. Chronic insomnia is defined as at least 3 months, at least 3 nights a week, you're having trouble sleeping. So in summary, it's not just the quantity, but also the quality that's important, and the timing. Shift work, people have a difficult time. Naps, when are you taking them during the day versus no naps and no schedules? How are we dealing with it? How are we catching our sleep? Are we consistent? Number 4, exercise. Sleep restores our energy levels, and too little can impact your willpower to focus and concentrate. So if you don't have the willpower to go work out, guess what happens? You gain the weight. You gain the weight. Chances are your apnea, if you have it, gets worse because your airway gets more compromised. And it also, if you lack sleep, it alters your perception of how difficult the workout is. So you'll quit. You'll feel yourself more exhausted before you really should, and you won't get a full benefit of the workout. It's also important for recovery as we break down and we sculpt our body and muscle tone during workouts, and we build them at night with important release of hormones such as growth hormone early in the nightly sleep cycle. So it's important. I speak to athletes a lot, and some of what comes up is a lot of these young players, they're having Tommy John surgery, and they all say it's from overuse. And sometimes I think it's not only them using and overuse, because, as a kid, I know in the Bronx, we threw the ball all the time. But I think with all these distractions and electronics, it's not really overuse in a lot of cases. It might be undersleep. So this restorative and rehabilitation that is supposed to happen when they go to sleep, they don't patch up those micro tears, and then it becomes a worse situation for their arms. So caloric burn benefits. While sleeping, we burn between 50 to 100 calories per hour. When you're sleeping, you can't snack, so that's going to save some calories right there. But if you're burning extra calories, then you're burning calories during sleep. And during REM, when we dream, your brain can be as active as when you're awake. So, that requires a lot of calories. In 2012 study, sleep-deprived folks limited to 4 hours of sleep for just 1 week became insulin resistant, as I mentioned, pre-diabetic, and that's a red flag for obesity. So it appears from all of these that your metabolism responds and is impacted by your sleep patterns. It could help maintain proper weight and avoid injury, especially for athletes who need fast reaction time, and reaction time suffers as we skimp on sleep. For me or you, a millisecond may not mean that much, but for somebody in the Olympics, and that's why just about all these professional teams and Olympic teams have sleep coaches now, it's the difference between getting a gold medal and finishing maybe 23rd, because everything is reaction time, and it really suffers greatly if you're not sleeping. So that gets us to emotional health, and I mentioned a little bit of this before with teenagers, but sleep and mood have a bidirectional relationship. Mental health is impacted by sleep. Sleep is impacted by mental health. One of the professors in California said, and I agree, there's really not one mental health disorder that doesn't have a sleep component. Sleep disturbance, as a matter of fact, is a diagnostic criteria for just about every mental health, including depression. And per the National Sleep Foundation, there's evidence insomnia is a risk factor for the development or recurrence of anxiety disorders, bipolar disorders, and substance abuse, or even being able to stay off if you are in a rehab situation. You really need to fix the person's sleep, where they may go back to, let's say, alcohol as a crutch to help them fall asleep, and they may fall back into alcoholism. And of course, PTSD is characterized by nightmares that lead to disturbed sleep, so that may be problematic also, not only for patients, but frontline hospital staff and other first responders that are going through this COVID crisis, because some of the things we saw here on Long Island and in New York, if you worked in the hospital like I did here, and some of the staff here, they saw some horrific things, some emotionally jarring things, like family members saying goodbye with FaceTime as opposed to in person. So we really have to look out for our first responders as well as patients. Sleep research is looking at connections with poor sleep and Alzheimer's, with the focus on sleep as a way that the brain clears toxins at night. And they're seeing that the flush of the brain that happens at night is much more rapid than what happens during the daytime. So it's very important that if we don't get that sleep, maybe we're not breaking down all those toxins. They in turn are building up and cutting down all those neural pathways. And last but not least, we have cardiac health. Sleep, picture of a heart with a happy face, getting a good night's sleep in a bed. And sleep deprivation impacts not only our brain, as we just saw, but also our heart. Sleep-deprived women, according to National Sleep Foundation, are at greater risk of developing heart disease than men. In a study in Warwick Medical School in England, 4,600 participants, women who slept 5 hours or less, displayed an increase in proteins called high-sensitivity C-reactive proteins. These are commonly associated with cardiovascular disease. The lead author, Michelle Miller, commented, quote, short sleep is associated with an increase in cardiovascular risk, and that association with sleep duration and cardiovascular risk is markedly different in men and women. And sometimes we think when people go to sleep centers and snoring, it's men, but basically after menopause, the odds are basically the same for sleep apnea. So you really should look about your health for sleep apnea, both females and male. And so if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea, you can be prone to aggressive forms of arterial sclerosis and also an increased association with the risk of stroke. You have to figure what's happening when somebody has apnea. You're cutting off airway to oxygen to your heart and to your brain. So it should be no surprise that all of the toxins are building up in your brain, and your heart is getting a rugged workout because you're cutting off oxygen. CO2 is building up in the brain. Your heart has to spike and say, please, let's get the blood and the oxygen circulating, so it never gets to rest at night. And one of the fun facts to know and tell is even that 1 hour of sleep that we lose in daylight savings time, when that comes around and we lose an hour's sleep, the emergency room goes up substantially from cardiac issues the next day, just from 1 hour's difference. And also car accidents go up. And it's because people are not as alert, and they're also stressed. And some people are so stressed that just that 1 hour is enough to topple them over the edge. So what are the challenges to a good night's sleep? Now we know what some of the reasons are that why it's important. Now we need to focus on the how. That's our challenge in this environment. During this pandemic, we have more stresses. What do we face in the homes that challenge us as far as getting more sleep? Daily life disruptions. It's a pair of sleepy eyes here. Difficulty in adjusting to the new schedule, as we mentioned. No time anchors to help keep track, and they're so important because we need to be consistent and not get off track, or our sleep will get off track. Low light levels in the home. You know, we're not cognizant of how important light plays in some of this stuff. And no schedule. A lot of people are working from home, and teenagers are sleeping in late. Athletes, they don't have any workouts. Gyms were closed. Things that we were doing our normal quote unquote life, it's just made more difficult. And I know also for the blind population, there's also a lot of questions about what is non-24 and how is that as far as what's going on. Non-24 is a neurological sleep disorder in which a person's sleep-wake cycle is longer than 24 hours. I mentioned just now about light, and light is a big signal to our circadian rhythm, which is our sense of when it's time to go to sleep and when it's time to be awake. Light goes through the eye, and it kind of goes and tells us to get that circadian rhythm started and to get the melatonin going and to help us realize it's time for sleep. In a blind person, in a partially blind person, a lot of times they'll still have the ability because it's different cells that are picking up rather than visual cells. It's different ganglion cells that are looking to get this light source, so they're still available. So it's really something that you may see within a totally blind population, and by the way, can be in a seeing population also. They can experience this phenomenon where they have this free running cycle, so they actually sleep a little bit longer than 24 hours, and they kind of don't have that. They don't have that reset each day. So what happens is they may go to bed at 9:30 one day, and then the next day they can't fall asleep till 10 o'clock, no matter how tired they are, because they don't have that mechanism working correctly. And it just keeps going and going until they're actually sleeping later each day and getting up later each day. And so obviously you can see how if somebody had a quote unquote normal job or normal hours, that would be very difficult to do, because they cycle through until they finally come back to what's considered nighttime hours. So it's not only their sleep, but it also is their body temperatures and hormones inside the person. They kind of stabilize and they look for these cues, but with this free running type of cycle, they don't have that. So it's present in a number of totally blind persons, but not all, and it can be present in sighted. And since it impacts not only sleep, but multiple cellular and hormonal rhythms, such as melatonin, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, testosterone, other symptoms such as severe fatigue, digestive issues, metabolic issues are common. It's estimated in the 1.3 legally blind population in the US that about 10% have no light perception. So of that group is the group that we would be looking at. It would be maybe 2/3 of that group having non-24 issues. So the diagnosis and the treatment would be, if you really thought that what's happening, that you're cycling through and you're on different schedules, and then you repeat and go back, you'd have to have a detailed interview and a review of sleep patterns as well as timing of your sleep. And the best way to help the doctors with that would be to keep a sleep log, or maybe a wrist actigraphy, sort of like a Fitbit if you wore that, so that they'd have a listing of, can they look on a graph and see that your sleep is shifting like that? And the treatment for that then is they would work with you is for the timing of melatonin to try to make that happen. And non-24 is kind of like melatonin. It's something that the medicine they use rather in that non-24, it triggers the melatonin receptors. And the doctors would work with you, whether it's with melatonin or a medication such as the one on TV. But they'd have to work with you one-on-one to work on the timing of the dosage and how much to take. The dangers of melatonin, especially here, is that it's not really FDA regulated. So you really don't know how much you're getting, and people tend to take more than they should, and they don't even know what they're taking because it's not regulated like it is in other countries. And it actually can make you more tired, because if you take too much, it's going to try to keep you asleep while you're trying to get up. So it's not something that I know a lot of people, they like to go and they get the gummy melatonin, or they do some other form of melatonin. But it's really something that if you're having sleep issues, it's probably best to work them with somebody so that they look at everything. They look at your sleep, they look at the melatonin, they look and see if there's any apnea involved, so that you're not taking all these other medications. They'll also look and see what other kind of medications you might be taking that may be interfering with your sleep. So this is kind of what's going on in a lot of households. It's a comic of Dennis the Menace, and I think a lot of parents are feeling this right now, where they're taking their naps during the daytime, and it says in the cartoon, mom's lying on the couch dead, just got back from work. Instead of giving me a timeout, mom took one for herself. And a lot of people, like I said, with the kids home, they're having sleep issues, but we all know why they're having sleep issues, because what they took for granted the teachers were doing, now they're doing, and it's a lot of work when you're not used to the schedule. So I put this cartoon in to remind me about naps also. Naps are good, but be careful when you take them, because if you take them too late in the day, you may be stunting your sleep drive, which works with your circadian drive. We have a homeostatic drive that your sleep builds up, and then as the day goes, you feel a little bit more tired, and you don't want to take a nap too late in the day and have a harder time trying to get to sleep. So here's some tips from improving your days and your nights. Your schedule. I know some people get very rigid about, well, I have to go to bed every night at the same time. We understand people are humans and we have lives, and sometimes on a weekend, maybe you want to stay up late. But the key to most things, whether it's diet, exercise, or sleep is to be consistent. So we have what we call the 80-20 rule. You don't have to be 100% with your schedule, but try 80% of the time to be within an hour of when you go to sleep and when you get up. So if you want to stay up an extra hour or so on a Friday night, fine, you could do that, but try to get up and go to bed same time every day. This strengthens your body's natural and internal clock, that's circadian rhythm. It's important on weekends too, is getting too much to bed much later, getting up later on the weekend, sets you up for problems come the new week if you have to get up at an early time. Make sure to get daylight as soon as you can when you get up. Turn on the lights, open curtains, or try to take a 15-minute walk before work. It's not just light that impacts our circadian cycles, it's our meal times, it's our exercise times. So again, consistency in what we're doing during the day will kind of help you get a good night's sleep that night. And there's a big one for everybody, caffeine. Many people are home and they're drinking perhaps more caffeine than usual, especially if they've lost their daily schedule patterns. For some, caffeine doesn't pose a problem if they use a moderate amount and if they're fast metabolizers, and we all metabolize at a different rate. But beware, if you drink coffee late in the day, it may still be in your system well into the period that you're trying to get to sleep. For instance, the half-life of caffeine for some is 6 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee at 12 noon, by 6 o'clock in the evening, it should be halfway. You should have only about half of it left. But the quarter life can be up to 12 hours. So if you're a slow metabolizer, you may still have the equivalent of a quarter cup of coffee at midnight that you took at noon. So it shouldn't be a problem if you haven't changed your caffeine habits during this COVID times. It probably is not the thing that's changing how you're sleeping. But if caffeine has been reintroduced to you at different times and you're having difficult times, then take a look at it and say, maybe you're somebody that metabolizes differently. Also, be aware caffeine's in diet supplements, chocolate, energy drinks, and some cold and flu medications. And a digital detox, where you have to do what I call control the uncontrollable. Whether it's CNN, Fox, all that news in general is driving all of us crazy. So we can control that. We could turn that off. So we can turn off all the electronics an hour or so before bedtime. That's what I call control the uncontrollable. We can't change the stories, but we can change when and how many times we hear that story. So check up on the world, but don't go to sleep with the world on your shoulders. And for some people, the blue light from digital devices can cause suppression of melatonin. The jury's still out on that. Some studies show that it's a problem for folks, and for others it's not. But if you are lighting up your eyes, and like I said, it's another thing you can look at. Maybe you want to start reading a regular book if you notice your sleep is a little bit off, or you need to really crank down on your information and try to get more mellow in the evenings and get a better habit. The news can be unsettling and stimulate your brains, and certain books or topics can be too. So try a more relaxing routine prior to bed, and set an alarm at night which signals you to park the phone in a charger, and charge yourself and be as kind to yourself as you are to your phone every night, making sure that it gets recharged. I looked on your website and I was happy to see all the meditation and yoga that's offered. Those are wonderful habits, stretching that you could do to prepare yourself for bedtime. The other thing would be a warm shower, because one of the things we mentioned with the circadian rhythm is to try and get ourselves ready. Excuse me, is the temperature to drop. So when you come out of the warm shower, your temperature will start to drop, and that will help signal your body it's sleep time also. And the environment, I have a picture here of two rooms. One of them is really cluttered and one of them is really clean. You want to have a welcoming place that's kind of uncluttered. Like I said, get the electronics out if it's bothering you. Don't use your bed for paying bills or any kind of things that are going to cause more angst. Sleep clean, tidy room, tidy mind. And it's a picture of a tidy bed and an untidy room. Take some time. And it also will help that you won't kill yourself if you wake up to go to the bathroom. You won't trip over half the stuff because you're half asleep. Remove stacks of books, get the TVs and devices out, and add some positive elements. Think about blackout curtains or room temperature. It's very important for some room temperature to keep the room cool, because like I said, we're trying to get the temperature lower. And if there's light from outside, block it out. If your bed partner is a night owl and is reading in bed as you're trying to sleep, that could be a problem also. So maybe you need to get some kind of shades if there's a problem, or earplugs if they have a loud TV on, or maybe tell them what a great lecture you went to today and how they should maybe change their habits so they live longer with you. And if you think it's just, regular lay people out there, a couple of years ago, the Air Force medicine, they realized that they're trying to defeat an enemy, which they really can't. And it used to be they spend all this time sleep depriving soldiers trying to toughen them up. And then what they found out is they would send them out there and they were shooting at trees because after a certain amount of time, they were having hallucinations. So you'll see in the Air Force medicine site now, they give tips for better night's sleep, which is prioritize it, set an alarm, make sure you're getting 7 to 9, as we mentioned. A routine, we mentioned that, be consistent. Unplug, which we just spoke about, caffeine, the environment, keeping it fresh. And alcohol, we mentioned also. Don't use it as a sleep aid. It really may help you to get to sleep, but it fragments your sleep. It destroys later sleep. It's a diuretic. You're up for the bathroom, and it just leads to trouble, and you end up needing more of it the more you use of it. So you build up a tolerance, so that doesn't go anywhere good. And not to be outdone, but just this week, I don't know if anybody saw October 7th, the new Army manual encourages soldiers to take naps. The Army's Physical Fitness Training Field Manual received its first upgrade in 8 years. Holistic health and fitness makes new approaches to how we are fighting wars. It also includes guidance on the importance of journaling, finding your energy pathways, and yes, taking naps. Stark contrast to the usual gung-ho Army teaching of the past. So the new instructions to leaders in the Army include, quote, give soldiers permission to nap when circumstances allow, encourage naps when appropriate, especially during continuous operations. Furthermore, it says naps will improve alertness and performance. And I know that when we look at some of the biggest disasters we've had with Exxon Valdez, Chernobyl, Challenger, every time they've looked at it, fatigue and these people working around the clock has played a major role in those disasters. And then finally, I think I'd like to tell you guys, St. Charles, we put our tips together. And again, I spelled out COVID with it. Consistency, get outside, video devices, electronics, try to put them away, increase your exercise, and detox from caffeine. And I'd like to thank you guys for being here today. Again, stay positive, test negative, sleep well. It's your health. And again, if you're asleep, you can wake up now. We're done. If you're still with us, have a great night, sleep well, live better. And again, I am the director of the sleep services. My number is 631-476-5677. Brendan.Duffy@chsli.org. And I can stick around for questions. Hopefully you guys got some materials out of that, and I'm happy to stay. And I had some questions ahead of time. I don't know if you want to review them or you want to open it up. I'll leave that up to the host.
Okay, you know what? I did want to address one of the questions. And the question was, you go to bed, you're tired,
Yep.
but you have so much on your mind. It just, what you did today, what you're going to do tomorrow, stuff like that. And you just can't turn it off.
Right.
So what are some of your suggestions to, turning that light switch off so you can get a better night's sleep?
Well, I was happy that they had such a great person like you, because you're doing all the things at your facility that they need to do, which is your breathing exercise. I don't know if you're doing 4-7-8 breathing over there, but that's one of the things that we do is, and the athletes, they fall asleep a half an hour. I deal with professional sleep coaches that deal with professional teams, and they were telling me they worked with the Vancouver Canucks, one of the teams, and they taught them how to do deep breathing exercises after games, because they're thinking about how they played and all that. And the deep breathing exercise increased their sleep time by 30 minutes. So I don't know if you do 4-7-8 breathing, but that's one of the ones they teach, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you'll hold it for 7, and then you slowly breathe it out for 8 seconds. And it helps with your parasympathetic system, so it calms you down. The other thing that the Canadian Olympic team does, and and I didn't think this works, but I tried it and it does. It's what they call the cognitive shuffle. And it takes your mind off, I guess, whatever you're thinking about. And what you do is you take a word, let's for instance say bedroom, which is an awful word. I'll explain why. And you take the first letter like B, and you just think of every word you can that begins with B. So I'm thinking boredom, bed, box, ball, and you do that. Then you go to the E and you do the same thing. The reason I say it's bad is I picked a word with two O's. So I always worried, what am I going to do when I get to the two O's? I have not gotten past the D. So it works. And I think also it's because it puts you in a kind of dreamy state and distracts you from any of the real thoughts. So those are a couple of things. And you guys, like I said, I looked at the website and I love the expression attitude of gratitude, because instead of worrying, you know, really one of the things we say is, how about journaling your worries if you want ahead of time, but how about journaling everything you're grateful for, so that you go to bed in that kind of a mindset. The deep breathing, the cognitive shuffle. And the other thing we say is, if you do go to bed and you can't sleep, the worst thing you can do is stay there, because then that's going to cause more angst. So we say, give yourself 20 minutes, half an hour at most, and then just get up and look at it as a good time that, hey, I get to listen to the story or read this book that I wanted to, instead of making it a very anxiety-ridden thing. I compare it to, if you went out to dinner and you weren't hungry, would you sit there and force yourself? And would you worry about it? It's like, oh, if I don't sleep tonight, I'm not going to be able to sleep tomorrow. So just let it go. Everybody's going to have certain bad nights. So don't let it get into your mind. The warm shower is another thing, like I said, that will help with the temperature, relaxing, stretching, yoga, meditation. All of those things are good to kind of get you in a better mindset. I think what we do is we kind of go from very active, and then we lay down and say, okay, go to sleep. And of course, you go from 100 miles to zero, it's going to be difficult. So you want to kind of transition a half an hour, an hour before.
We have a hand raised with a question. I think it's Tony Lee, Roldan Ortiz. You have a question?
Yep. Hi, Dr. Duffy. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been really informative.
Oh, you're welcome. You're promoting me. I'm not a doctor, though. I'll take the promotion. I'm a sleep educator. I don't want the doctors to get upset with me.
Oh, okay. So my question is, my husband, who's been diagnosed with sleep apnea, has been dealing with it. He went for studies. He has the machine. He was using the machine for a while, and then he discontinued using the machine, felt that it wasn't really helping him.
Right.
As far as the sleep goes, even though we know it has other benefits for the heart and breathing and all of that.
Right.
My question is, and he's dealing with other things like extreme fatigue and all of this. But if we were interested in seeing you and working with you, would we just call that number directly that you showed?
If you call that number, I'm in Port Jefferson. I'm working out of St. Charles, but any of the CH facilities, they see consults at Good Sam, the doctors there, and also at St. Charles. We have our own staff in the building, so we could see. And it is important. I'm glad you brought up this topic. It's not the easiest thing to get used to it. I'm on CPAP. I was in this for 23 years. And finally I said, remember what I said about waking? I started to get there and said, man, I'm starting to feel tired. And it's not a good look when the manager is tired of a sleep center. It's not good for business. Right?
It's not good for business.
It's not good for health. They're like, you know everything. It's like, how can you be like that? So I said, let me check myself. And I had been stopped breathing 9 times per hour. It's usual that everybody starts breathing 5 times or less. And the reason is your respiratory system, when you change position, whatever, it has to restart. So, it really, I didn't pay attention too much to that number. 5 and 9 is how do I feel during the day? Well, when I started to gain weight, and that was unusual for me because I usually had a good metabolism, and I checked it again, I was at 19. So I said, well, this will be a song and dance because I work here. So I'll just throw that mask on and everything will be great. And it wasn't. So I kind of got a better feel for what the patients go through. And sometimes it's just trying a different type of interface. Excuse me, but I'm not sure how long ago your husband was diagnosed, but they've come a long way with the interface. Now the one I use at home is just in the nostrils, and it goes over the ears, sort of like a nasal cannula, but with a bigger bore tubing. So it's not as cumbersome as what they used to have over the face and, with the whole big headgear. So yeah, give it another shot. And by all means, if it's a mask issue and you think it's a mask and nothing else, then maybe we could, you can call me and we could look at a different mask first if you think that's what it is. But definitely it's important. Like I mentioned, it's good for your heart and your brain.
Right, of course. And he does have the ones that go through the nostrils as well.
Okay. All right.
We're in West Babylon, and you work only at a Port Jeff, is that right?
Yeah, well, I'm actually the system director, so I actually was at Good Sam today. I go through all of them, but I'm not the physician. So the physician on site, the only hospital that have them on site would be, it's St. Charles, Good Sam, and I think St. Catherine's also sees people on site. The other ones, you would go through outside doctors, but it's important to don't let your primary doctor diagnose it. You really should go to a specialist, and here's why. When they go to medical school, they only get 2 hours on sleep. And some folks are very proud and they don't want to say that they don't know it, or they may just tell you, you're just depressed and put you on antidepressants and everybody's sleepy and this and that. Because for 2 hours of college education through their medical practice, they just don't have the expertise to really know how to diagnose. We had a lady come one time and she said she was put on antidepressants, but she knew that it wasn't the issue. And she came here and it turned out basically all she needed was her iron increase because she was having leg kicks, neurological leg kicks. You probably see commercials where creepy, crawly feelings, periodic limb movements.
Right,
so with her, it wasn't even apnea. It was strictly her leg kicks. That they weren't leg kicks you could see, but it was neurological. And as soon as we did the sleep study, you could see, because we have electrodes on the legs, every 20 seconds, like clockwork, you would see this neurological twitch, and then you would see her brainwaves wake up. So she wasn't getting allowed to fall into a deep sleep. I explained it kind of like if I stood beside you and I hit you in the shoulder all night, you may not notice that I did that 300 times, but you'll probably feel lousy the next day. So, you want to get diagnosed by people that really know the ins and outs of not just sleep apnea, but everything else that could be going on.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We have a few more questions that have come in. One is, can you speak again about the importance of temperature? If we heard you correctly, you said that cooler is better?
Yes, cooler is better because your temperature is going down. And that's one of the things that happens in non-24 is that regulation, as well as the sleep time, gets off kilter. So for regular, everybody's different. I don't want to tell people freeze out their bed partner and they'll have a hard time sleeping. We don't want to do that. But normally you're trying to get your temperature lowered. So you don't want to be in a warm environment because your brain's going to be more reactive to the heat in the room than it is to cool. So for instance, in my house, I drop it to 66. You could always add blankets, but it's hard to go the other way. So, we're still rolling the air conditioner these days at 66. Windows have to be closed because the Yorkies smell the raccoon and then nobody sleeps.
Another question we have here, thank you for your response. Another question is, what about those of us who fall asleep easily but wake up 2 hours later and can't seem to get back to sleep?
Okay, great question. Here's what happens 2 hours later. When you go through the sleep cycle, I should explain this a little bit. You go into a drowsy state and then you go into stage 1, stage 2. It goes through a whole cycle. In stage 1, you'll have more of that in the beginning, and younger people will have more of that. Stage 3, deep sleep. And that's basically when your body and physical repair is being done in stage 3. I said stage 1 should be stage 3. So that happens in the beginning. But usually we cycle through a whole cycle of sleep, which includes REM every 2 hours. So it's not unusual if somebody comes to me and says, I'm sleeping well, and then after an hour and a half, 2 hours, boom, I'm wide awake. And that's becomes REM sleep. If you look at somebody's brainwaves in REM and somebody's brainwaves that are awake, they're almost identical. I've been looking at studies and scoring them for years. I'd be hard pressed if I only got to see the brainwaves if that person was asleep or in REM. But one of the things that happens in REM is your muscle tone, which already drops off a little bit when you fall asleep, drops off a little further. So if that's enough in your airway to impair your airway, it's going to wake you up because you're already basically at an awake brain state. And now all of a sudden, this last catch of your airway being compromised is going to get your attention. So we'll have people say, I wake up and I'm wide awake. And some people will actually say, and, you know, my heart is racing, you know, well, maybe it's the dream, but maybe it's the fact that, you know, basically if I came in and started choking you, you'd wake up and your heart would be racing and you'd find it hard to go back to sleep. So I think it may be just that you're waking up through REM, through that cycle of sleep. And it's a little bit difficult because that brainwave is the same and your muscle tone could be interfering. And it doesn't have to be a full obstructive apnea. Some people, they're very vigilant and their alertness. Any little interference or muscle tone drop off that blocks that anyway might be enough to garner their attention and wake them up and say, what was that?
Mhm. Got it. And that actually leads me to a question about optimal sleep position. You hear people talk about, oh, I'm a side sleeper, I'm a back sleeper, I sleep on my stomach. Is there an optimal position?
Whatever way you're comfortable. However you can
Right.
get your sleep is best. The worst for people who have apnea, they found out, is on their back, because with gravity, they know their tonsils and adenoids, and then uvula, that little thing you see in the cartoons, when everything relaxes, that falls back. And actually, when we run the test, they get mad at us because we say, we want to see your worst sleep here because we want to see how bad it is, right? So we'll ask them to sleep on their back. And some of these people, they're actually so bad, they say, I haven't slept on my back or in a bed for some of them in years. I sleep in a reclining chair because they know how bad their apnea is. And rather than get it taken care of, they self-medicate themselves by saying, I'll just go to a recliner, I'll be fine. They may not be snoring as loud, but if they're still having those interruptions, their heart rate has still got to wake them up all night instead of getting a break. Their cortisol hormone is still stressing them out, sending signals to the brain. So it's wear and tear on the body.
Another question we have is, do you recommend over-the-counter remedies or prescription sleep aids?
Not really, unless they're prescribed in conjunction with a sleep specialist. The only thing that I've seen, like I tell you about melatonin, if somebody, because you guys are working on anything, I've seen where the athletes sometimes they'll actually use tart cherry juice. And the reason is it has melatonin in it. It's natural, so you're not going to GDA or one of those pharmacies and you're buying something that's not regulated. So if you're going to do it, I would say tart cherry juice. The reason they use it, the athletes, is not only does it have melatonin, but it's an anti-inflammatory. So for muscle aches, for the pitchers and everything else, rather than have them chewing Tylenol and things like that, they'd rather get something natural. And they can't trust the melatonin because if they're Olympic athletes, they don't want to get drug tests to find out that what they thought was melatonin is not melatonin. So if you're going to do anything, maybe you try a little tart cherry juice about an hour before, and maybe some of what wakes the people up is these aches and pains as they turn. Maybe that will help there. I noticed one of the things when they did that cocktail for Donald Trump, I don't know if anybody noticed, but one of the things they added was melatonin. And I'm sure it wasn't to help them sleep. It was because of these anti-inflammatory elements that it also offers. Melatonin, which people are not aware that it's an anti-inflammatory also.
Melatonin is an anti-inflammatory?
It's got anti-inflammatory properties.
Wow.
It's multitask. It's known as the hormone of darkness because of, its relation to sleep. But yeah, that was one of the things of the 5 things they gave them that was on the list was melatonin. And people asked me why, and it's probably because it was anti-inflammatory.
But at a prescribed dosage, not just.
No, you don't want to, people, what's out there a lot is they take way too much. When I was looking here, some people take like 5 milligrams. But in what I read in preparing even for this is they're looking at in a partially sighted or a blind population like 0.3, a very low dose, in conjunction with a specialist to help you with the timing, because really you have to look at a diary and look at the timing of sleep, and they can map out here's the right time to take that melatonin. But it's not something you might make yourself worse than better if I said it doesn't. Everybody's tolerance is different. I'm not a doctor, so you got to do that through a doctor and do it the right way.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned quality of sleep and the importance of quality of sleep, and then you spoke a little bit about fragmented sleep.
Mhm.
Getting up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, does that constitute fragmented sleep?
That's all right. Everybody gets up a couple of times, so that's not bad. It's how long does it take you to fall back to sleep? Everybody is going to wake up, like I mentioned, either through the breathing or just to take care of business. But you want to try to consolidate, and if you could avoid those. Again, what's interesting is some people, especially the men, will come and they'll say, "I get up to the bathroom all the time." And what happens is if they have very bad apnea, they're actually producing more urine because of apnea, because when the heart rate kicks up, it produces the urine and then it wants to relieve that stress. So it will say, we got to get up and go to the bathroom. So they'll find out that when they fix their sleep, they actually fix what they thought was a prostate problem. They're not getting up. I had one guy, terrible apnea, and I thought he was going to be so good the first night he was on CPAP. And when I woke him in the morning, I said, well, how do you feel? He said, I'm a little foggy, but what's really amazing is this is the first night in years that I never had to get up to go to the bathroom. And you watch your fluid intake in the evening also, and make sure you're not doing things that are going to wake you up. So some of the certain foods and beverages you should avoid, because I think you got a write-in question on that, is the caffeine and energy drinks. Ask your physicians about any medications, how they're going to impact your sleep. Because maybe if you start a new medication, you see it's altering your sleep. Maybe there's another time of day you could take it. Chocolate is packed with sugar, so we don't want to work our brain to double task. You want to try to have it focus on sleep. Spicy foods, high fat foods that it's got to process and digest. It doesn't help the body when it's trying to concentrate on restoring and repair to have to do all that multitasking. Chicken's hard to digest. Pizza, we all like it, but it's loaded with fat. And pasta, the same thing, and alcohol we mentioned already. So some of the good sleep foods, if you need a snack, would be banana, magnesium. It's going to relax the muscles. Might help with some of those periodic limb movements if somebody had that. Somebody actually makes banana tea where you have to actually trust where you buy the bananas, because they're actually taking banana that's organic and they're breaking it in half, cutting off the ends of it, and then breaking it in half with the skin, boiling it in hot water, and then seeping it out, because a lot more of the magnesium is in the banana peel. But the scary thing with me for that is, can I really trust it's organic? Because I don't want to make a stew of pesticides. So
Right.
that's it. But some of the other good things for night snacks is honey or almonds or even plain yogurt. Those are good things that are good to have.
I noticed you didn't mention turkey slices. I have friends who'll say that, oh, I just get up and have a few turkey slices, and
they're on the list.
They're on the list,
I
turkey.
didn't mention them. Yeah, but a lot of people think that that's what puts them to sleep. You would have to eat about 5 turkeys to get the amount of tryptophan. So it's really not that. It's usually people we have a natural cycle. We were talking about circadian rhythms, and there's a natural cycle during the day, which is why siestas came into play, where let's say if we just had that homeostatic drive that it was just them and you charged and then your battery ran out, we would be in problem land by the time 7 o'clock came if we were just draining our battery. So the circadian rhythm kind of works with that homeostatic, and it puts our downtime, I guess, where people were having lunch and doing that kind of stuff, but it's not really the food. It's a natural lull in our circadian rhythm. And then the hardest time to sleep would be about 7 and 9 o'clock. And I think, again, the thinking was the hunters years ago when they were molding this whole model was they were out far away hunting and they had to get back. So if they got tired, there was no way they were going to be able to stop for a nap. So they make your strongest alertness somewhere around 7 and 9 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock in that evening range. So it's hard to fall asleep. So people, even if they're tired, they have a hard time falling asleep too early.
Well, and speaking of napping, we have a question here that's asking, is it okay to take a couple of naps a day?
What are we doing? Are we trying to make up because we're not sleeping well at night? Or are we tired during the day because something's going on at night that hasn't been diagnosed? Like a couple of naps would seem to be a little bit over what you would need. Usually napping is if you're not able to, you want to get your full contingent because, again, we're supposed to sleep at night. Shift workers, Unfortunately, we're 24/7 society, but shift workers have higher rates of breast cancers and other cancers because they're working against when that hormone clock is trying to work. All these cells have different clocks. So you want to try and get your main sleep at night. If you miss your sleep and you have something that you have to take care of, then sure, to increase your alertness, you could take maybe a 20-minute nap, but you don't want to nap too long. You'll wake up drowsy. And here's the other thing I say. I see a lot of people, if they drive to Florida or whatever, and they want to do it as soon as they can. So they just keep going. They start to get tired. They say, oh, I'll just stop over and get a cup of coffee. And then they're back on the road. They go through the drive-through. That caffeine is not hitting them for 20 minutes. So you want to just sit there and have a cup of coffee and wait for the caffeine to kick in. And the same thing, like if you have something come up and you just for whatever reason got a bad night's sleep and you do have something important, to get back to your daytime naps, we can have what we call an appuccino, which is you have your coffee, and let's say you have something to do at 4 o'clock and you had a lousy night for whatever reason. Well, you take a nap somewhere around 12, 1 o'clock, or even 2 o'clock, right? But you're like, I don't want to sleep too long and I want to be awake for what I have to get ready for. If you do an appuccino and you take a half-hour nap, then you wake up, the caffeine will kick in, so you're getting benefits from both the nap and the caffeine at the same time.
So did I understand you to say that the nappuccino is that you would have a cup of coffee and
Have your coffee right before you take a nap.
then
Yeah.
take your nap? Okay.
Yeah. And again, you have to watch how you metabolize your caffeine because it may interfere with that night. But if it's something really important and you just couldn't sleep the night before, then that's a way to motor through on occasion. But you don't want to depend on caffeine to have to use that as a crutch or anything else. Melatonin, caffeine, you should be able to sleep naturally and work it out. As long as you're going to the right people and not letting people put you on medications that are not like Ambien. We had a guy come for a sleep study here from Riverhead, and when he got to St. Charles, I said, are you on any medication? And he said, no, just my Ambien I took before I got here. I said, when? He said, before he drove here. I said, why would you do that? He said, because I wanted to sleep. I'm having a sleep study. So it just showed to me how little information people are getting sometimes, unfortunately, by people that are giving these medications that maybe don't even understand it themselves. And to tell you one other quick story, we had a psychiatrist come here one time, and he worked at Stony Brook, and he had a sleep study. And, he was saying, knowing what he found out about sleep and how that could be related to emotions and mental, that it really woke him up to, he really needs to check the sleep issues prior to issuing medications for depression and things like that, because it could be a sleep issue, not a depression issue. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. We have another question here.
Hello.
Hello.
Carolina, you have a
Hey,
question?
Devin. It's Carolina. I have a question, guys.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Duffy. Thank you, Devin.
Not a doctor.
My question is, I usually have coffee after dinner. Try not to eat as later than 7:30, but my coffee is right after, right? Now, you mentioned that caffeine is not good, of course, for a lot of people, but it doesn't affect my sleep. Now,
Okay, then.
does it affect me as I get older if I keep drinking coffee? Because by 11 o'clock, I'm out.
Yeah, so if you're sleeping, what I wonder about, sometimes we put too many rules on things that are working. If you're working and you're getting through the day and you're feeling just fine, then I'm just fine with your coffee. I don't want to take away anybody's TVs or their coffee or anything else. But these are the things you look at if during the day you're feeling lousy and you're not at peak and you're exhausted and you just can't motor through the day without, the coffee. Like I'd like to see if you switched, how would your day go? Is this the crutch, or are you able to metabolize it and not have it interfere? Because we don't want to put pressure on people that are having difficulties, mostly by how they're relating to sleep. We don't want sleep to become their master of, they start to, almost have angst when they go to bed. Like, I wonder if it's going to be like yesterday. So we don't want to say, well, I can't have coffee now. That's another thing that's wrong. If you're having coffee and you're sleeping well and you're getting through your day, then God bless it. Keep doing it, but don't worry about what's down the line. You deal with it as it comes. If it starts to become something as you get older, then you'll work on that. But if you're feeling well during the day, I say that's good.
Hey,
Thank you.
Brandon.
Thank you.
We do have another question. Do you want me to share this one, Devin, or do you have one?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick.
Mhm.
Prior to going online, we were talking about snoring.
Yes.
And can you just touch on that again?
Okay, so snoring, a lot of people will ask, if you snore, does that mean you have sleep apnea? It may not be full sleep apnea, but it is a vibration in the airway. And that it can be dangerous in and of itself because people are worried about the snoring vibration. If somebody's snoring really loud, and we mentioned they have pauses in breathing and things like that, it probably is sleep apnea, or if not sleep apnea, something called upper airway resistance, or hypopnea. And a hypopnea is just a partial blockage, but all of those interrupt your sleep and fragment your sleep, and a lot of them will decrease your oxygen level. So we see some nasty oxygen levels, which means that CO2 is going up instead of oxygen. So snoring in and of itself is something to be careful with, because generally, as we get older, our muscle tone and our airway, it just gets more loose and limp, and the snoring gets worse, and you want to get it looked at, especially if, like I said, males 17-inch neck or above, and females 16-inch or above. As you gain weight, I have guys the guys come from some of these muscle building studios, and I couldn't believe one guy said he was built, like a little tank, and he said, I want to get one of those CPAP machines because everybody in my place where I work out has it. I was like, that's not something you should strive for. But I looked at his neck and I listened to him, and I said, he's probably getting a CPAP machine. And sure enough, he had sleep apnea because they work themselves out so much that neck, it gets so big. And the same thing with the football players. They go from 200 to 300 pounds, and they don't realize that as they're building out, their neck is getting crowded going the other way also. So something to watch out for.
Another question here is, I heard that taking melatonin every day for 3 months or so is also very bad. Is there a limit on how long you should take it if you do take it?
I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to start getting into that kind of stuff. My general statement is it's really not something that I would mention to take unless you go through a physician, because the levels are not something you could trust out there. So I wouldn't even venture. I don't want to step outside my lane. So when it comes to melatonin, the only thing I'd go as far as the natural, which is the tart cherry juice, which is going to be a low level. Any of the other stuff, because it's not regulated and I'm not a physician, you really should work with a physician for that.
And would you say the same about, another question here is about sleepy time tea? Is it okay to use a sleepy time tea or the sleepy time, extra sleepy
Yeah,
time
those
tea?
teas are fine. The teas are fine, the chamomile, the sleepy time. Some people use lavender spray, which is nice to spray on the pillow, whatever. So if they go to a different environment, they'll bring the spray with them, and they'll have things that they're familiar with. So again, it's consistency. Sleepy time tea, I haven't heard any physician have any kind of problem with that. But melatonin, it's a hormone, and that's why I have a little bit extra respect and caution for people. And something that's not regulated is important too.
To be careful with, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a question. You mentioned in your presentation something about low light levels in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming you're talking about during the day or as it becomes dusk.
Yeah, during the evening,
Okay.
because if you can lower the light, it's another signal that it's nighttime. So you
it's
want
a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
then, lowering your light.
yeah.
Okay.
In the evening. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. You want to keep it low lights in the evening, because sometimes you go to some houses and you can't tell if it's the middle of the day or midnight because every light in the house is on, and you're basically trying to tamp everything down, and just give yourself that hour I mean, it is amazing, but we treat our cell phones better than we do. We would never go out with a cell phone that says, "Oh, it's at 5%." You know, people start to worry. Don't call me. I don't have any battery. But we'll let ourselves go out when our battery is at 5 or 10%. So we need to treat ourselves as well as we do our little toys, our little cell phones that we make sure is charged every night and goes off at 100%, while we go off our way at 15%. Treat ourselves better.
That stuck with me. You're always mindful to charge your phone and make sure your phone's charged up, and
Yeah,
to be just as mindful for ourselves and charging ourselves up.
yeah.
Are there any other questions? Anybody else want to take advantage of the expertise here? I think
I
we're
have
good.
one that I think I'll address. I'll just address one more because somebody asked what time of day is the best to exercise. And that's a tough one because it depends on your chronotype and what time you go to bed. Because a lot of the old school coaches, again, they like to go on a brag that I get up at 5 in the morning and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'll say, and you'll be on the injured list in a little while. It really depends on if you're the chronotype, then you can get to bed at 9 o'clock and get to sleep and get up at 5, then that's really not that early for you. That's your normal cycle. But if you're somebody who's a 11 or 12 at night and then you're getting up at 5, well, we already went over what happens with 5 hours sleep. So you may be setting yourself up either for injury or the inability to recover. So you got to ask, are you an early bird or a night owl?
Got it.
And that about wraps up. We covered it all.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. We all got quite a bit from what you had to say. And if you could just give us your info one more time. And
Sure.
let us know how we can get in. Like, for instance, I live right here in West Islip. If I wanted to go see a sleep therapist, would I just call West Islip? Or would I have to
Yeah,
call?
probably Good Samaritan for you guys. It would be a call over there. I didn't bring all the numbers, but if you just send me emails or just call me, I'll be happy to direct you to the right facility that works for you guys.
Okay.
Schedule. They also, the one thing we didn't mention too, pediatrics, tonsils and adenoids. If you guys have kids or grandkids and they're snoring, because this is where snoring is really important, then really make sure they get checked out because it impacts their growth and development. And basically, they don't thrive as well because they're having a bad night's sleep. And they could have as apnea or interruptions as bad as us. But like I mentioned before, that growth sleep at the beginning is so important for them. We don't have as much, but it is for them in their deep sleep. And tonsils and adenoids, there's a couple of the facilities, they handle kids, pediatrics, and they'll have a sleep study. And they'll see they need tonsil adenoids out, and they'll do much better in school. They won't be acting out and things like that. It's important.
We have some.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I was
Kim.
just going to say we have some feedback. Thank you for a very informative workshop.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Another individual, great workshop, super informed presenter. Thank you for putting this on. Those are the comments that we have now. Devin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, if you just give us the info for the St. Charles Hospital.
Sure. For St. Charles, you can reach me. My direct line is 631-476-5677. And the email is Brendan, BRENDAN, dot, don't forget the dot, Duffy, DUFFY, at chsli.org. And if you look up online, I have a whole thing. If you look up my name with sleep and apnea or anything, you'll probably find pages of articles that I have out there. And some of them should have my email addresses too. But I've done a lot on sports and just general topics on sleep. So if you put Brendan Duffy, if you Google Brendan Duffy sleep articles, you'll come up with a host of articles on different topics.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. Sleep well, everybody.
So, I hope everybody gets a good night's sleep tonight. So
you.
thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you like what you heard and you like to see us do more of these workshops, send us an email. Let us know what interests you. We'll try to hook it up. And if you like to make a love donation, we certainly would appreciate that. As you know, COVID has put a dampener on every fundraising event that we had scheduled. So if that's something you can do, that's something we definitely would appreciate. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And again, thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Kim and Roxanne.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank
You
you,
too.
everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye now.